Welcome back to another installment of Professor Charles's Law. Shooby-doo-doo-doo. Oh, yeah. Welcome back to another installment of Professor Charles S. Live, and today is the standalone episode, pretty much titled Painkiller of Black Lightning Season 4. So let's get right into it. So with this episode, we see Grace and Anissa go on their honeymoon, pretty much out of Freeland. You know what I'm saying? They finally got a chance. They already tied the knot. Now they're going on their little honeymoon and everything to Ashina Valley. Ashina Valley is like this high-tech place, like a modern Wakanda, if you ask me. But when they get there, it's not quite the vacation they planned, right? So in this episode, we see Grace and Anissa, pretty much they go to this place thinking that they're gonna have time to, do things that couples do that when they get married, right? And the thing is, when they get there, they run into someone from the past. And the thing is, before then, there's this guy that takes this pictured. And what it is, he's taking picture to let them know, like, oh, they're metas. You know what I'm saying? Both of them. And this is like, hey, you shouldn't have been taking our pictured. And the thing is, Grace gets kidnapped. But before, Anissa tries to fight off the people that's trying to take Grace to this, they're like this, conscious cult. That's what I'm calling them right now, conscious cult. Really, when you see this, you're just like, oh, man, they're about to kidnap her. And she sees Khalil. She freaks out. Because remember, Anissa doesn't have a great reputation with Khalil. Because remember, Khalil, sometimes he's good. Sometimes the shadow self come out. So in this episode, we see Khalil and his other side comes out, like his good side, like this enlightened side of him, talking about, all the good things, what he can do and all this stuff. But the shadow self said, nah, bruh, I'm taking over right now. I'm taking over. And you see his shadow self, and his shadow self almost kills Anissa. So in this episode, besides this, let's talk about Khalil's team. So Khalil has his team, which I really think works for this episode because this is a standalone episode for Painkiller. Remember, his show is coming to CW. So we come across someone that's similar to Gambi, that's kind of the man that's behind, figuring out different things, and having the different networking people that he knows that can help, Khalil, which is a former ASA agent. So that's the first member. The second member is a former soldier that suffered from drugs. And the thing is with him, he's like this herbalist type of guy. He is the one that heals Nissa when Khalil poisons her. Yes. And the crazy thing about it is he knows a lot about the Pierce family. You know what I'm saying? Each of them, pretty much. He even knows their identities. Wow. So, and also what we see in this episode is that, Anissa's like, I'm not leaving until I got, we find out where Grace is at. So in this episode, we see Khalil struggle. You know what I'm saying? Like Khalil, I left this hero behind. I'm not in Freeland anymore. You know what I'm saying? In Freeland, I'm doing this type of stuff. But this is not me anymore. And you can see the conflict between him and Anissa. That's his sister-in-law because he almost ended up being with her sister Jennifer. And we see he's like, well, I'm not a hero. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to, trying to figure out how to learn how to use my powers. Because if you really paid attention, Khalil's still struggling with his light self and his shadow self. His shadow self is kind of like, hey, man, I'm in for the ride. Light self, you going to stay right where you at and be enlightened. And the thing is, I love this episode because it talks about duality. You know what I'm saying? Every person has their good side and their shadow self. And we see that with Khalil. And his shadow self said, hey, man, I've been with you for all these years. You know what I'm saying? You can't get rid of me. He said, the sun and the moon. You know what I'm saying? You're lighting your shadow self. So the thing is, You can't coexist without just your good side. You can't just have a good you without the shadow self. So, you have to have that balance. And we see that Khalil is having this identity crisis with it because he's like, I want to get rid of him completely. And it's like, bruh, you can't get rid of this other part of yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like a puzzle piece that's missing. You know what I'm saying? And that's originally what Khalil was planning on doing. He said, okay, well, if I can figure out how to get rid of this or how to control it, you know what I'm saying? And it's hard because we see that with Khalil dealing with it. He had to fight his shadow self again, which was very interesting because I like the dynamics where he's inside his conscience. They're like in this karate dojo, and we can see them going at it. I was like, yo, this is so cool, man. But also in this episode, we come across the new villain for Khalil. I was like, yo, if he gonna get a standalone episode, bruh, I don't want to see no Tobias. I don't want to see no Lala. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, leave that alone. We already know they got a series coming out for Painkiller. So the thing is, Maya. Maya is this like lady that is kidnapping Metas, and she's a part of like this brain cult that's dealing with consciousness, which is a really interesting villain because they don't know much about Maya. Also, we see Khalil, have one of his other homeboy, the one that's kind of like the Gambi 2.0. I'm gonna just call him that for right now. But Gambi 2.0 saying, hey, look, I know someone that can help us, which was really interesting. This girl that was a friend of his former friend that was an SSA agent, you know what I'm saying? She's like, what do you want? And Khalil was like, hey, look, I'm here to figure out, I need some weapons. Khalil comes out with the bag with the money. I was like, yo, Khalil out here just like, bro, like, I got the money. I want all them weapons. So we see pretty much Khalil eventually kind of understanding, like, okay, I can't help it. He's like, and this is like, as much as we helped you, Khalil, and I was like, yeah, pretty much. They really did, And we can see Khalil. I love the scene where Khalil comes across the photographer that took Grace and pretty much Anissa's picture. It was so funny because he's like, where are they? He's like, no, don't run me over. I was like, bruh. And it was so funny because Khalil was just pretty much, he was fronting. He was fronting, right? He literally drove off, you know what I'm saying? I was like, that's so cool. But also, we also saw this episode that maybe Khalil's new love interest, the person he got the guns from, might be the new love interest for the series. Also in this episode, we see Khalil understanding more of his other side. You know what I'm saying? There's a compromise amongst them. He's learning how to turn his shadow self on sometimes, his light self on sometimes, when it's convenient for combat. So in this episode, we see Khalil is bad by himself. You know what I'm saying? I was like, wow, like, literally, excuse me. I was like, this is crazy, Khalil. And I love the scene where, like, he's shooting at people. He's got the person, one of the guys, and they're shooting at him. He holding up for hostage. Then the one person, he shish kebabs with the sword. I was like, dang, Khalil, like, bro, you really are dangerous. But it was really dope with this episode. Also, we see that he couldn't catch up with Maya. Maya was the reason why he was trying to figure out what's going on with the Metas. Luckily, Grace escaped before Khalil could get there. That was a little odd, too, because Grace was like, I don't really trust him. I don't know if his other side going to come out and kick my butt. or either something else. And I was just like, Grace, don't worry. He's got it under control now. But I love that in this episode, we can see when Khalil switches now, it seems like he's a little bit more stable. Because I was like, look, we got a Painkiller series coming out. You know what I'm saying? Can we at least get him where he's kind of learning how to swap back and forth and understand one another? And the building kind of pretty much blows up. But Khalil gets out of there in time before the building because Maya sets the building to a self-destruction mode. His partners come. I was like, that's really cool. But I gotta say, man, this episode was solid. Also, let's talk about one other thing. Maya is connected to another villain, Odell, the one that brainwashed Khalil. So now it makes sense. Ashina Valley is definitely gonna be very interesting. I'm looking forward to the Khalil series. I'm not gonna lie. This episode was just like, all right. this is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see how Khalil was going to deal with turning on his light side to his shadow self. Also, like his team, we saw that. Also, we saw him saying his farewells to pretty much Jennifer's sister, Anissa, and saying, I miss, your sister and everything. She still think about me, doesn't care about me and stuff. I think this was a really solid episode. I was so glad we did not have Tobias in it. We did not have, Lala in it. It's a whole new villain. Odell's daughter, Maya, is the villain. And I think this could work, man. The person that plays Painkiller, also known as Khalil, is a decent actor. You could tell, like, the fighting choreography, he really has gotten good at that. And I was a little worried, guys, because I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna work. You know how black TV superhero shows don't really last. But I really hope that the pilot does well for this episode, titled Painkiller. It seems like CW really, they're taking a risk with this, and DC. And I think like it was a solid episode. We saw Khalil's allies. We saw his hideout, because Khalil had his own little hideout. We learned about Ashina Valley. It's not a lot of humans in it, but there's like digitalized humans. There's some humans there. And I think really, when you think about it, it was just like, this works. It's a solid episode. It was focused on Khalil, pretty much. Anissa took the back seat. Grace had some action. It was more about Khalil and his team. So, have you guys seen the latest episode of Black Lightning? You tell me in the comments, did you like the standalone episode for Painkiller, also known as Khalil? Until next time, guys, I'm out.
Subscribe, comment, like. Thanks for watching.